situation, you have a choice. The Republican candidate for governor.
Have sexual relations
and I realize that this is something he isn't
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Hey. Welcome to another edition of Backfire this week with John Stanberry, Franklin Chansey, myself, Steve Doball Hickson, and our chief engineer. He gave himself a round of applause. Daniel gave himself a round of applause before I said it. Good to have everybody this morning. Anything interesting in the news this week? Talk about?
Well, it rained one day this week.
Hey, yeah. I think I measured an inch of rain at my house this week.
Yeah, and it happened in about 20 minutes.
Yeah. Of course, the other day I was on the other end of town and it poured down rain. I thought, oh boy, I went home and there was no rain at my house.
Yeah, it was quite a storm that passed through.
Yeah. Anyway, I would welcome a little more rain if it
But
just
you know what's
happened.
funny is parts of the city didn't get anything.
Oh,
It was real odd.
Oh, I know. It's just amazing how just hard showers in scattered areas.
We pulled up to a friend's house. It just moved into a new house, and I got there, and I kid you not, all the patio furniture was laying in the front yard. The porta potty that the contractor had been using was laying on its side, and a gas grill was sitting upside down, all in a 5 or 6 minute period of a storm.
That was one of those 60-mile-an-hour winds.
I think it must have been.
Well, Pat Summit's gone, folks, and I know there's a lot of people sad about that, and I just wanted to mention it this morning. I'd like to have just a moment of silence for Pat Summit. What a great person. Go Big Orange.
Well, she certainly had a remarkable life.
Yeah, she did.
And was a real testament to what hard work can do when you outwork somebody else.
Well, and let me say, too, the president issued a very nice statement on her passing. I know he had awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom, I think, in 2012. So I thought the statement from the White House was very nice as well.
It's a real point of pride for the state, what she has meant to not just the university, but the whole state, and I think the inspiration she's been to a lot of people.
But, we had our own local version of that, Coach Smitty, as well, the winningest coach. So East Tennessee itself has been very well represented in women's basketball.
John, what's going on with this political forum? Local political forum coming up. Do you know anything about it?
It's a local political forum.
I know. Thursday. Do you know anything about it?
All the candidates were invited. It's sponsored by the Bradley County Republican Party. So if I were a candidate, I would expect the ideas and concepts that you're going to be asked about to represent the conservative beliefs of the local Republican Party.
Where's it going to be held?
I'm not even sure, and that's really
John,
bad.
this just doesn't sound like you.
Well, I tell you what happened was originally they had asked if I would moderate it, and I said yes, just in general. Yeah, I'll be glad to do that. But to be honest, I have 2 different candidate signs on my property, and I didn't think it was fair and didn't think it would look right for me to moderate it. So at that point, I stepped back a little bit. That has to be there on time, and that's pretty difficult for me.
The event's going to be held Thursday at 6 p.m. at the County Commission meeting room of Bradley County Courthouse.
Right. Now, there's been one before. The Bradley County Tea Party had it, but apparently only 3 of they had education forum, I believe it was. Only 3 of the candidates showed up, and the 3 challengers, the 3 incumbents, all showed up to answer the questions of the Tea Party group, and the 3 challengers chose not to show up.
Do the Democrats have one of these, Franklin?
I haven't heard of one being scheduled. I mean, there have been joint ones scheduled in the past. but I have not heard of one. This time.
They'd have to have a joint one to have anybody show up, wouldn't they?
Well, may or may not be true.
Well, part of the problem is the phone company has done away with most of the phone booths, so their meeting spaces have been greatly curtailed.
A good one.
I just got
Quality over quantity, my friend.
Do you guys know anything of what's going on with our sheriff and Dan Ross?
Well, Mr. Rawls has made
Commissioner Dan Rawls.
some very serious allegations. The district attorney has recused himself from the process right now and asked the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations to look into the allegations that have been made.
Well, the DA had said that all along, that, there's a process to this, and somebody has to come forward, file a formal complaint, and turn it in. And District Attorney Crump had said all along that, look, this is a local issue involving a fellow elected official that people have campaigned together, been at rallies together, and that it wouldn't be appropriate for him to do that. And as soon as a formal complaint was filed, he immediately turned it over to the DA's conference. Which, by the way, the director of the DA's conference is former District Attorney Jerry Estes, and Jerry will assign that to another DA from another part of the state with no ties to our area.
I read an article about it, and this van keeps coming up again. This van that they sold. They had a public auction for it. It didn't bring anything, had a minimum. Then they sold it at a meeting or something in Nashville for a lot more money than it brought at the auction. There's something about the electronic equipment in it was worth that or more than that and all this kind of stuff. But you know what? Electronic equipment usually has about a 3 or 4 year life, is my experience with it, before it's outdated. I know years ago, we used to lease equipment, high-tech equipment, because it'd be outdated to buy it in a few years. So, the equipment's, you can't even claim it is worth anything. So if the van brought whatever $20,000 and it brought $12,000 at an auction or whatever, I just don't see anything wrong with that. But they seem to be just wanting to keep bringing this van into the issue. So, oh well.
Oh, we've talked about that, before. It's hard to say how much equipment was put in. Was it still useful? Was it not useful? But you're right. The decrease in price of computer equipment is extremely rapid in today's technology.
Yeah.
So you can pay a lot of money for something 1 year, and in less than a year, it can be worth significantly less.
It was sold for $20,000. The van was was sold and was purchased in excess of $130,000. And the van was sold to $20,000 to a bounty hunter in Nashville, identified as a friend to the sheriff. Well, I think that they tried to auction it off before that. It only brought $12,000 or something, so I don't see what the problem is. Anyway, I guess we'll hear more about this as the investigation continues.
We may or may not. Depends on whether there's any merit to any of the myriad of allegations that have been made. If there isn't any, you may not ever hear anything about it.
Well, the TVI doesn't comment on investigations.
Not
The TVI,
while they're doing it. So
they do it, and then they send a report to someone else, which will, again, probably be a DA from another area that will be appointed to this case.
Mm-hmm. I've got to ask, do you think Elizabeth Warren might be a candidate going to run with Hillary?
I think it's unlikely.
Blues of a kind.
Well, she would lock in the demographic of I'm not really an Indian, but I claim to be.
Yes.
There is that demographic in America.
Anyway.
And left wing. She'd probably help get Bernie's support.
Oh, I think she's going to be highly visible during the campaign no matter what.
I hope she is.
I do too.
The Blues Sisters.
I do too.
The Blues Sisters.
I do as well, but I think she's unlikely.
Blue of a kind.
Right.
They both had their smocks on. What do you think about the European upset this week, Franklin? The vote. The exit. What do they call that?
Brexit.
Huh?
Brexit.
Brexit. That
Britain exit.
Britain exit.
And now there's
Brexit.
Italia exit.
Well,
Frexit.
the question is, what does it unleash, so to speak, in Europe, and how it affects us? That's the real question. I mean, the Scottish folks have already begun work on a referendum to withdraw from the United Kingdom.
Well, but
Ireland's talking about doing the same thing
right, but
now.
the leader of that move, it's not in Ireland, it's Northern Ireland. The Northern Ireland's really in the worst shape, because Northern Ireland, if you live in Northern Ireland and you work in Southern Ireland or in Great Britain, you will now have to have a passport every morning to come and go to work. Now, Scotland, the problem there is the person who's pushing that movement to revote wanted to leave Great Britain in the first place. So this is an agenda that she already had, and she sees this as an opportunity to stoke that.
Sure, Scotland voted overwhelmingly to stay in the Union.
But she was the leader of the movement to leave.
I'm disagreeing with you. I'm just saying we don't know what it has unleashed. Well, that's the difficult thing. We like to think sometimes that we're the only folks who have some, for lack of a better word, uneducated voters. And I'm not taking a side on the issue, but I will tell you this. It was interesting. On the day of the election, the most Googled term in Great Britain was, what is the European Union?
Well, let me follow up on that. And Franklin kind of opened up a door I was going to go to anyway. Now, he is right. People are not as informed as they should be, and that was the most Googled term. But the idea that he's moving towards is these are a bunch of bumpkins who didn't do what the cultural elites wanted them to do. For example, the last Labor Party minister for higher education has now told Parliament that they should ignore the vote and stop the madness of Brexit. There's a petition on the British government's website demanding a second referendum, and they're claiming the reason they're demanding is because it was below 60%. For leaving, and that there was only less than 75% turnout. Now, what they don't say is it was a full 6 points higher turnout than the 2015 election that elected the current government. So you have all of the good liberal progressives like Franklin and the Democrat Party here on this side of the ocean. When they don't get their way, it's a bunch of ignorant people, and we need to do what we want anyway.
Actually, the vote didn't come down so much between progressives and conservatives over there.
No, it was elites.
But it did come down significantly on age-related issues, and that was the interesting part about it. People under 40 overwhelmingly voted to stay in the Union. People over 40, and in particular people over 50, voted to leave. That was the largest breakdown difference between the two of them.
And that's the second door that I wanted to go to. Here's the progressives' take on what Franklin just laid out for you. This is from The Independent. How old people have screwed over the younger generation. That's a headline. Here's one from Vice magazine. Old people seem intent on effing us over forever, and Brexit proves baby boomers should get less of a vote. Here's GQ magazine. We should ban old people from voting. Here's on Twitter. When will old people die? Maybe old people should have to pass a competency test. I guess Brexit proves that old racist folks always get what they want. Old people vote. So once again, the cultural Marxist movement of the left, if they don't get their way, are very totalitarian. Now listen to that. Old people don't deserve to vote anymore, according to the cultural elites. Now he is right. It did break down. You had cultural elite conservatives that were supporting staying, and you had cultural elite liberals that were supporting staying.
What's interesting is that I'm listening to this quasi-criticism with a sense of amusement. The whole idea of the EU was really what John's parties espoused for years and years and years. breaking down trade barriers.
That's not true.
It is true.
The problem is not the breaking down the trade barrier. The problem is putting a bunch of bureaucrats in Brussels in charge.
I'm not arguing for
And
doing
we were
anything.
never for
I'm
that
not
kind of overarching
I'm not-
control.
I'm not criticizing them for what they did or didn't do. That's their business.
Well, let me give you.
I am just telling you that the whole point of it was to break down trade barriers and to make economic growth.
Yeah, but actually, that's a good point, because that is
and
actually
that's something that theoretically
You're right.
your party's always
You're right,
been
but
for.
the problem is that
So
was
you got
only,
your
that
current
was
nominee.
only- I'm acknowledging that the cultural elites, both left and right, sold the working
what does
people.
cultural elite mean, John?
It means someone who thinks they're smarter than the common working man and that wants to basically control society to their benefit. And that's the problem. They sold it with this idea that we're going to break down barriers. But guess what? Guess who they put in charge? A bunch of cultural elitists in Brussels. For example, Great Britain is the 5th largest economy in the world, I believe. 90% of all the business that transpires inside Great Britain is local business. So small businesses in Great Britain, 90% of their business is other Britons. Well, the problem is they have to jump through all of the hoops. For example, now get this. This came out of Brussels, the EU. They actually regulate the curvature of a banana that you can sell. Now think about that, folks. That's what this is a reaction to. It's normal, average, intelligent people saying this bureaucratic nonsense has gotten out of control. We want our country back. We want our freedom and independence back.
It's got union in the name. How is it?
It's a voluntary association.
It's like the United States of America. That was the idea was to compete with us.
Sure.
The idea was to be able to even
to create the world's largest trading.
How about the bureaucratic?
Well, it's that, and there is a component of this when you start having unlimited, unfettered Muslim access, and once they get into, say, Germany's brought over 1 million Muslim immigrants in, and up until the last few months, very little screening of those people. Once they're there and they've got their paperwork in Germany, they can go anywhere. They can travel into Great Britain, blow something up. They can travel to France and shoot up a nightclub, and nobody stops them. And part of this was a reaction to we need an actual sovereign nation that protects its borders.
What do you think is going to go happen there from this point going forward?
Look, there's multiple ways to look at this. You know, I'm over here arguing that I think,
are other countries going to follow?
I think it's a good thing because I believe in freedom, and I actually believe that you're not going to do away with nationalities, and there's not a problem with having nationalities. But having said that, economically, it's going to be tough for a while. They're going to have to renegotiate trade agreements. Now, it's not a problem. Our businesses have trade agreements with all kinds of nations. Great Britain will just be not involved in the agreements with the EU anymore, and they'll have to renegotiate trade agreements with companies and with other nations. Now, the problem for us is when we have an arrogant president who goes over there, lectures them, and threatens them with a subpar relationship. You know, our greatest partner throughout the course of our history, and he more or less threatened them. Now, he's backed off of that because he probably helped the Brexit vote go through. They were highly offended at the condescending tone and threatening tone that he took in a press conference over there.
What was it? Trump said that that he felt that by Obama going there, it may have helped push the vote.
It did help push the vote. They were very even the Remain people were offended by the way he lectured them. He pointed his finger at them.
And you don't suppose he was actually invited there by the prime minister?
He was, but the prime
Okay.
minister overplayed his
All right.
hand.
Well, that's their issue then, not his.
It's both. Well, he has judgment, Franklin. What is he, a puppet that the prime minister pulled his string and so he doesn't bear any responsibility for what he said?
Okay.
Now, actually, that's probably a possibility, having said it.
Well, they've got the Three Amigos Summit going on this week, don't they? Isn't that what they're calling it, the Three Amigos?
The what?
The Three Amigos Summit. In other words, Obama's going to Canada to meet with the Canadian Prime Minister and the President of Mexico. That ought to be interesting.
Well, I'm sure they'll have a lot of discussions on how to strengthen Mexico and Canada. We won't really have a seat at the table, with that group.
The three
What
amendments.
can I do to help Canada and Mexico?
As John abandons his party's platform for 40 years again.
Look, I'm for
Mr.
free trade.
Consistency
No,
there.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that if I illegally enter Mexico, I'll be put in prison. But if a Mexican illegally enters America, they'll be put on all the welfare
if you
rolls.
illegally enter Mexico carrying a bunch of
No,
guns,
if you
probably will be put
illegally
in
enter
prison.
Mexico at all, they put you in prison. And yet they had the gall to criticize us wanting to stop illegal immigration into the United States.
You know, I can't understand why. I mean, really and truly, Franklin, why we go to a country and we have to show our ID and passports and so forth. But, you know, if they come here, they don't have to show it.
Yes, you do.
You do?
Yes.
But if you don't, there's no real punishment. That's the problem. And Franklin's giving you technically you do. Yeah,
no, not
you do.
technically. You do.
Well, then why did our own federal
Technical
government
about it.
recommending doing away with the term illegal immigrant, which is a completely accurate descriptive term of an immigrant who comes into the country illegally?
I'll say what I've said for years in here. Why does everyone on your side of the aisle who's so worked up about this issue, why don't you spend all of your time cutting off the demand for labor to come here?
I'm okay
by
with that,
punishing
Franklin.
the
I've
people
agreed
who
with
are
you
hiring
about-
them.
I've
But
agreed.
you don't talk about
Yes,
that.
I do talk about
No,
that,
you
Franklin.
don't.
Yeah, I do.
No,
Apparently,
you
you don't
don't.
listen.
The 99.99% of these folks who come across the border illegally are here because they want to work.
Can I say something about that? The 99.
Who are they working
Wait a minute.
for?
The 99.9% of them that come here illegally could come legally.
No, they couldn't.
Yes, they can.
They can't.
If we want to hire Mexican
If
workers,
you passed a guest worker program, you could.
That-
But y'all won't do that
We
either.
have guest worker programs. Now, if you want to talk about expanding them, that's one thing. But don't mislead the public
I'm
and
not
say we don't
misleading
have
anybody.
them.
That's
we
the
have
problem.
Them. I
They're
can
here
tell you,
for jobs.
the Democrat Party's opinion of illegal immigration would be vastly different if there were large numbers of lawyers and journalists invading our country.
Okay. Well, we could probably use some of those too.
but I mean, there are ways for them to come here legally. If I needed 50 workers,
We have immigration laws. We allow legal immigration. The point is, are we or are we not going to enforce our own laws on the books? And the Democrat Party and this president just got spanked by the Supreme Court for violating. Matter of fact, what he got spanked by was the 24 previous statements of his own that he didn't have the authority to do what he turned around and then did. But here's the best part. And frankly, I will tell you, I would be offended if George Bush did this. The Supreme Court turned down his illegal immigration movement. His actual statement after the Supreme Court issued their ruling was, I really don't care.
What was
We're
the
not
ruling?
going to change. The ruling was they allowed the lower ruling to stand. I'm sorry, Franklin, that is the way the system works.
I understand, but how did that come about?
Because the state sued him over his
No,
illegal
it came about because there were 8 members on the Supreme Court,
So
and they
what?
had a tie vote.
So what? We've had 8 for years before. We've had an 8 tie like that on the court under Democratic administrations. But Franklin, you and I can argue that point separately. This is the President of the United States, the highest elected office in America, and his statement from the Oval Office was that he really didn't care. He wasn't going to change what he was doing. He was going to
That is
continue
not
doing.
what he
said,
said,
"We will
John.
continue
John,
doing exactly what we said we'd
John,
do."
that is not what he said at all.
what did he say, Franklin?
First of all, the portions of what he had done before, which are affected by that ruling, he said he was going to honor it. And he also said that means the voters will have
Yeah,
to
but you've
decide
also
in the
had
next
judges
election.
that have already said they're not honoring
No,
it. He's
they're
already
not.
been ruled against on that as well.
Not
What was Obama's plan to shield illegal immigrants? from
essentially,
deportation?
to put it in the simplest way, he just basically said there's going to be a prioritization system on illegal immigrants.
Does the law set up a prioritization system? The law enacted by Congress, that
No.
group that the Constitution establishes?
No, there doesn't. The law also doesn't have a grace period for a traffic ticket, but police officers every day of the year decide who they're going to let go and who they're not. Executives can do
You're
that.
right, Franklin, but not when it contradicts the actual way the law is written.
No,
and
that's
his
not true,
illegal
John.
immigration statements
That's not
actually contradict what Congress passed.
That's not true.
The kid's back in town. The kid that built the clock that looked like a bomb, represented the bomb.
He's back in town.
Yeah, he's back in the country. Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
Anyway, he won several $1 million. The family sued the school. I think they won a couple of $1 million or more or something. Then he moved back to his country, wherever he was from, and now he's back in Texas. What do you think about this situation as a whole? In other words, first of all, the kid suing a school system for doing something he shouldn't have done. You understand what I'm talking about?
Well,
How in the world would we pay this kid's family several $1 million over this clock?
First of all,
that
did we
looked
pay
like a
him?
bomb?
Who's we? Number one.
Who's we?
Yeah,
the
who's
school
we?
system. The school system.
Okay.
Texas school system.
Okay. Why'd they do that?
I don't know.
Because he took them to court, and because you have a
Did
Justice
did
Department
the
that's
court
issuing,
order them to do that, or did they settle this and pay him?
I don't know.
I'm sure they settled it.
I'm sure they
And
said.
why did they do that?
Because the media would paint them as these horrible racists, which they did, irregardless of the fact that his dad actually set this in motion.
I know that's gonna be a real huge factor.
His
in
dad
Texas.
set this whole thing in motion. There's tons of evidence. There's tons of statements here that they purposely made this happen effectively. And then they turned around and got millions of dollars off of it.
I mean, his dad's a
Part
radical.
of which they'll probably donate to Muslim backing charities that will funnel the money to Hezbollah and Hamas.
I mean, isn't his dad a real radical?
He is.
What's his dad? His dad is like the head of some kind of organization.
He is. They're activist Muslim supporters.
But I just can't imagine why the school system would settle with him, just to keep it out of the news.
Well, I can tell you
just to
one
make
thing
it go
that happens
dead.
with liability policies. If an insurance company looks at a situation and they say, okay, we can settle this. Let's say we can settle it for $10,000. And you have $1 million coverage on your liability. Mm-hmm. They will go to the person with in this case, the school system, and they say, look, we think we can settle this for $10,000. So we want to settle it. And the school system will say, well, we're not going to sell this because we didn't do anything wrong. They said, that's fine. But because we can settle it for $10,000, if you go to court and you get a ruling of $1 million, we're only liable for the $10,000 we could have settled this for.
Are you sure that he's actually been paid this money?
I just saw it in the news. They're talking about that.
I mean, they filed a suit. That is
won
true.
a lawsuit, winning several $1 million. That's the way it was reported. I saw it yesterday in the news.
Okay.
Franklin's done his homework.
I'm just saying, I haven't heard this, so I don't know.
Okay. If I'm wrong, somebody let me know. I guess we better take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
Woot FM is your hometown oasis. WOOP LP Cleveland. Whoop Island. Radio 99.
Check into cash. The cash you need today is waiting for you at Check into Cash. It's your money, so come in and get it.
Get a payday advance today for up to $425. At Check into Cash, we make it quick, easy, and confidential.
The cash you need is right here, so stop worrying and stop in to Check into Cash today.
Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Did you know that U.S. Money Shops cashes all checks, even the ones most check cashers reject? Tax refund checks, government checks, payroll checks, and many more. And when you cash a check with U.S. Money Shops, we'll give you 10% off your next purchase. At U.S. Money Shops, we have everything you need at a fraction of regular retail. So stop by one of our 11 locations or visit us online at usmoneyshops.com.
Buy or sell or buy today, the better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Some restrictions may apply. See store for details.
After 135 years, Hardwick Clothes, America's oldest since 1880, has delivered on our commitment to produce the finest navy blazer in America. This limited edition blazer was announced as the style winner in Garden and Guns Made in the South Awards. Crafted in Cleveland, Tennessee, we use premium Italian wool from Vitale Barberis, custom Bimberg lining, and signature gold buttons. It's available through the finest men's stores or at hardwick.com.
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
Train engineers put our heating and cooling products for almost every test imaginable. So while you're sending your kids to school, they're sending 10,000 volts through a compressor. Testing like this is the reason Train is so reliable, and why our engineers prefer their steaks. Well done.
Ready to indulge in Train comfort? Call a Train comfort specialist at Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. High quality service and installation for more than 30 years.
It's hard to stop a train. Really hard.
Dr. Christopher Chase, with Associates in Plastic Surgery, now offers his patients the convenience of a Cleveland office at 2350 North Ocoee Street. Dr. Chase specializes for the ladies in breast augmentation, including lifts, reconstructions, and reductions. Also, tummy tucks or mommy makeovers, and facial rejuvenation, including facelifts, eyelids, brows, nose, and he also offers Botox procedures. Check out Dr. Christopher Chase. He is certified by the American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Plastic Surgery. He's a member of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons and the American Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. Check their website out at aprs.md. That's aprs.md. Call for your convenient appointment in Cleveland at 624-0021. 624-0021. 2350 North Ocoee. That's Dr. Christopher Chase.
You looking for something sweet? I know you are. Bring your little sweet self to the Village Bake Shop. Around since 1961, there ain't a baked good in the galaxy the Village Bake Shop can't whip up for you. So when you're ready to treat your mouth to a taste you won't soon forget, get over to the Village Bake Shop in the Village Green Town Center, or give them a call at 476-5179. You dig?
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
every Saturday. That's right, every Saturday.
From 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239. Or go see him
every Saturday
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, we're back.
About some of them.
We're back live in the studio again. So I want to ask you. There's some controversy going on about dirty polls right now.
Dirty polls?
Yeah, the polls are showing that Hillary's winning by big margins.
Oh,
and
they
so forth.
the last poll, they oversampled the Democrats. That's always gone on. They oversample the Democrats. And the thing people need to understand is when you do that and you report a poll like that, I don't like the polls. I don't like the polls whether we're winning or whether we're losing as Republicans. I think they poll too much, and the polls become a leader rather than a reporter.
I agree with you. That's not, what he said's sort of correct. if it's a poll of registered voters, there are more Democratic registered voters. That's different from likely
voters tend to favor Republicans more.
And so
registered voters
so
favor
when they
Democrats
do registered voter polls and try to take that into account, also national polls don't tell us a whole lot, because you have states where, you take California, for example, 1/7 of the population of the country is in California.
Right.
So
most of them are Democrats.
But by the same token,
that poll's going to come out of there. That doesn't tell us how the Electoral College would break down.
Because even though there is a huge weight in the Electoral College, it's not proportionate to its total popular vote.
Right.
Sure. But I actually, that's one thing that John and I will agree on completely. I think there are way too many polls.
I agree. But here's the problem. You have a First Amendment, and you can't tell people they can't do polls.
Sure, absolutely.
But the media could be much more responsible on how much reporting they give them.
I think once they start doing all these polls, every organization thinks they have to do their own poll, and there's so many of them that it's very difficult to not let that become the story.
You have to get into how was the poll designed and how are the questions. For example, now the gun control issue, and I hope we won't argue a lot, but like you'll hear 90% of the people support common sense gun laws. Well, yeah, when you ask, and that's the actual question, do you support common sense gun laws? But if you actually go, hey, here's a sample of a common sense gun law, do you or don't you support it? It's not 90%. And so that's a good issue where the media has really driven this 90% number, because that sounds overwhelming, but it's really not a very useful statistic because it doesn't apply to any actual bills that are before Congress.
The Democrats just ended a 25-hour sit-in trying to draw attention to gun control. Let's talk about gun control just for a minute, John.
Sure.
Now, let's not get loud and start arguing, because I want to talk about this. What are a few things that could be done to change the gun control that you would go along with that hasn't been done so far? What are there anything to maybe change gun control just a little bit that you might be in favor of?
I think there's plenty of laws on the books that aren't being properly enforced. There's no law that was put forward this past 2 weeks that would have stopped the shooter down there. Now, you get into some real tricky questions constitutionally and civil rights wise. For example, this latest push has actually put the ACLU and the NRA on the same side in these issues, because the problem is, for example, the shooter down there. I think the FBI had plenty of reasons to remain suspicious of this guy. The problem is due process, evidentiary rule of law. How much of your constitutional freedom are you willing to give up for a supposed increase in safety? On top of the fact that, for example, the Justice Department with the assault weapons ban back in the 90s actually concluded in 2004 study that the effect of the assault weapons ban wasn't even measurable.
I understand that they're not following the laws.
The Columbine boys broke 24 different gun control laws.
Yes. So what can we do to make the laws more efficient, Franklin?
Well,
that we have in
I would
place.
disagree with one part of the statement that John made.
Okay.
One of the proposals that was up was that you would not be eligible to go in and purchase a handgun, or not a handgun, but any gun really, if you had been on this watch list in the last 5 years.
Okay.
The shooter in Orlando would have been on that list and would not have been eligible to do that. Now, the other thing it provided was a process that the person could appeal that decision and get a review about it. I don't really see what the problem is with that.
Right.
I know John has.
Let me interrupt you on the facts, though, Franklin. I don't know if you've read the bills. The Republican bill, you're right, put a due process system in place. The Democratic bill did not.
No, there's
the bill
a different
the Democrats
bill.
put up in the Senate had
bills.
no due process. You're right.
No.
The two that had due process were both put forward by the Republicans.
Senator Feinstein Fines bill did have a due process component.
It wasn't one of the ones voted
When you
on.
say a due process, tell me what you mean.
You'd have the ability to petition a judge to essentially overrule.
All right, let's talk about some of
That's
these
the
problems.
Cornyn bill.
Let's talk about some of these problems. There's some problems with people that have been put on these lists that shouldn't have been put on these lists, and that's what the problem is, right, John?
Absolutely.
And you can't, and they can't be removed easily.
That's the issue.
So that's the issue that we're
That's the
fighting
issue.
about.
Yeah.
To make
Now-
that happen.
now, the
so
fact-
what do
now
we
the
have
fa-
to do? We've got a Republican and a Democrat here. What do we got to do to solve that?
I think the due process
The
component's
Cornyn
the way
bill.
to do it.
You passed the Republican
Well,
Cornyn bill that the Democrats in the
Tell
Senate.
me how that bill
The
works.
Senate
the problem
Democrats
with-
have actually blocked that bill for over a year now.
The problem with that bill is that it didn't have a significant enough period in it
3 days.
to allow the government to do anything really.
Well, but
And now, hold on, let me finish. I'm just talking about what the
Not
bill
when it
says.
takes. How many years is it that before the investigation is going to be finished for Hillary? 70
Well, now keep
years?
in mind that the
I'm sorry,
ACLU is actually, surprisingly, the ACLU is against all of these bills.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
All right,
They're
go-
very
go-
consistent whether you agree with them or not.
Go ahead, Franklin. You've got the floor.
What the bill did was essentially say, if you were on this list, that the government had to take some action within 72 hours to establish
And a judge had to be
establish probable cause.
And
the
the
problem
judge had to
is,
be involved.
if you had probable cause, you'd already be prosecuting them.
All right, let me ask you a question, Franklin. How do you feel about civil asset forfeiture?
In general, I don't like it.
Why do you not like it?
Wait a minute, what is it?
That's where the guy driving down the interstate gets pulled over for driving erratically, and they find $100,000 in his car. And they confiscate the money because they say it's clear that he shouldn't have. Who has $100,000 in his car? Therefore, he's probably a drug runner. We confiscate the money. How do you feel about that, Franklin?
I don't like it.
Is there due process involved?
Well, that's the question. I don't think there is appropriate due
So
process.
how do you feel about confiscating someone's constitutional right to bear arms based on the same process
if there's
that you're
adequate,
against?
if there's adequate due process, then I'm okay with
Well,
it.
but you're not. The Democrat bills that were put forward in the Senate last week had no due process at all.
That's just
None.
not accurate.
It is
It's
accurate,
not
frankly.
true.
The Feinstein bill wasn't put forward last week. That's not one of the bills they put forward.
Tell us what your bill represented, the Democratic side. What did it say?
The bill would have, if you were on one of these two watch lists that are
Okay.
out there,
Uh-huh.
and you went in to buy a gun, you would be blocked from doing that.
In the store.
You'd be told you were blocked to do it,
Okay.
and then you would be allowed to file with a judge to review that to determine whether or not you ought to be allowed to do that.
That's actually not right with the bill that was put forward. That is the Feinstein bill. You're right. But that bill was not put forward. The bill put forward in the Senate had no guards for due process, had no judge involved. The Cornyn bill, which is a Republican version of the Feinstein bill, was voted down by the Democrats. So they had an opportunity to pass the Cornyn bill. You could have disagreed with the 3 days, which is what Franklin was disagreeing
and
with.
it also captured only a very small swath of the people on the list. It had a much smaller breadth of those people.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there's a couple of these different lists out there.
Okay.
Okay. There's a formal no-fly list.
Right.
Right. Then there's a watch list. Okay, which is different from that.
Okay.
And the Cornyn bill didn't capture all of those people. It only captured the people
But
who
the
would actually.
Democrats didn't
No, hold
even
on.
allow a vote on the Cornyn bill. Did
Yes,
the Cornyn
yes.
bill start in the right
Yeah.
direction, in your opinion, Franklin? You're arguing over specifics, right? Why didn't your Democrat buddies who said they wanted it?
Let me finish. If you ask me the question, let me answer it. I actually would have voted for it because it's at least a start. Okay? I think the concern was that, frankly, the Republican Party would just pat themselves on the back and go, oh, we did something.
So, in other words, it wasn't about the children, it was about the politics.
John,
That's what
what
you
did
just
I
said.
just say?
You said it was the politics
What
for
did
the
I
Democrats.
say I would have done?
It voted for
You're
it.
not up there. Harry Reid's up there, and what you just admitted was Harry Reid played politics with children's lives.
And the Republicans who voted
They
against
put
those
forward the
Democratic
Cornyn
bills
bill
didn't do
because
that?
they had no due process.
Come on. Yes, they did.
No, those bills
John,
didn't.
I'm sorry, but you need to read a different source because
All right,
that's not true.
Let me ask you a question.
In fact, hold on. The big bill they're trying to get done is a bipartisan bill that's being sponsored by a Republican.
I'm going to give you both a homework.
Susan Collins.
The same bills, Franklin, in the House failed in a committee vote shortly before their sit-in on a bipartisan basis. Democrats in the House committee voted that bill down, and yet your grandstanders went in and violated House rules. Now, that's another important discussion. Ted Cruz was a bad guy for having a filibuster, all of which followed Senate rules. But the House actually violated the House rules, broke the rules, and they were heroes. Tell me the difference between those two actions, Franklin. Why was Cruz portrayed as an evil guy for keeping the rules and shutting down business, but the Democrats actually violated the rules to shut down business, and they're heroes?
I don't think they shut down any part of the government, John.
They shut down the business of the House,
violating the House
rules.
That hadn't done squat in about 2 years.
Once again, just like the immigration issue, if a liberal doesn't get his way, then he gets to violate the rules. By the way, the Speaker of the House, while he closed out their sit-in, actually held up their fundraising emails that were going out while they were sitting in the floor of the House chamber.
He was fine to do that. He was fine to do that.
By the way, Franklin,
do you
think a gun owner in and of himself should be watched, like scrutinized, like, you know, we the de Blasio?
Just because he's a gun owner?
Yes.
No.
Well, Hawaii is now the first state, democratically controlled Hawaii, the first U.S. state to place firearm owners on the FBI's wrap-back list, which was previous to this used to monitor criminal activities by individuals under investigation or people in positions of trust such as school teachers or daycare workers. So now every law-abiding gun owner in Hawaii, and here's the best part, they're going to capture anybody who travels to Hawaii who carries a gun on this list. So now anybody that enters Hawaii with a gun, anybody that owns a gun in Hawaii will now be on one of these government watch lists that Franklin is talking about.
You mean that's something the
Tell
state
me
of
that
Hawaii's
you're okay with that.
That's something the state of Hawaii's doing?
The Democratic Party in Hawaii, the Democrat governor of Hawaii, just passed that last year. So the next time I say you all are coming for law-abiding citizens' guns, explain that to me.
Well,
it is Obama state, isn't it?
It's an Obama state. It's a Democrat state. And now law-abiding citizens who have done nothing but own a gun will be on one of these government lists.
What's this website you got this information
Frankly,
from?
that is the news. It's actually been reported all over the news.
I'd like to
ABC.
learn about the issue, John. Is it okay if I look it up?
Do a Google search on it.
Okay, that's what I'd like to see.
If I give you two guys a homework assignment, you think you could do this? I
didn't like doing my homework when I was in school, so
I just want you both to write a bill that we could vote on between.
That will never happen because John wouldn't support any of them.
Well, no, I've got a few things I'd support.
Well, tell us what those are.
Wait a minute. Okay,
he asked you that question a minute ago. What would you support?
What would you
bill
support?
that I would support that I think would help. Now, the Democrats are saying that if you're on these terrorist watch lists, you should not be allowed to buy a gun. That's what Franklin just laid out. So, how about a law that says if you're on those same lists of potential terrorists and you're not a citizen, you should be deported immediately? How about that, Franklin? That's a gun control bill that would actually help save lives.
Wait a minute. Let's have an answer.
Are you for that?
I could think about that.
So we will immediately deport anybody that's on these terrorist watch lists who's not a U.S. citizen.
Well, maybe we should. Franklin, would you go along with that?
I would listen to this.
Hey, we're getting somewhere, John. We're starting to get somewhere.
But does that also mean, though, they don't get to buy the gun, then?
Sure. If you're going to, my point is, if you're going to say they can't buy a gun
and
they're illegally in the country, let's deport them.
Now, here's the question, and this is what I don't know the answer to. Okay, my speculation is, this is just my guess. Okay, my guess is the folks that are on this list who aren't citizens probably are a relatively small number on that list.
It may be, but you would support immediately deporting them, which puts you in camp with Donald Trump.
I would support having a hearing to determine.
Here's another one for you. How about a bill that states that no security official guarding any a government official shall be allowed to carry any more effective weapon than the most effective weapon a normal citizen is allowed to carry in that jurisdiction?
Say that one more time.
That's
please.
A gun control bill?
Yeah, it is.
All right, say that one more time.
A bill that states that no security official guarding any government official shall be allowed to carry any more effective weapon than the most effective weapon that a normal citizen is allowed to carry in that jurisdiction.
In other words, a security guard.
In other words, our government officials can be guarded and protected at the same level that they allow normal U.S. citizens to be guarded and protected. Oh, wait a minute. D.C. is a gun-free zone. That means there wouldn't be any armed protection in D.C.
This isn't a gun control bill he's talking about at all.
It is a gun control bill.
It's
It
not.
would control. It
No,
would.
it's
It would say there's no guns in D.C. So why should they have to be protected with guns in D.C.?
No, it would say D.C.'s flooded with guns from Maryland and Virginia
But they're
and
not
other
legal.
states around it.
They're not legal, Franklin. That's the whole point of. That's my point all along.
All right. now,
Criminals
wait a minute.
don't obey laws.
Wait a minute. Well, let's,
See, John
let's
couldn't
get Franklin.
stick with the premise of
Well, no,
this
it is
whole
the
discussion.
premise.
Wait a minute. You
Very long.
put it in a question. I want to get an
All right,
answer.
let me. I'll just give you. Charlie Rangel was asked that very
All right,
question.
well, let's have-
He's, New York congressman, Democratic congressman.
Okay.
They asked him. They said, "Well, you know, aren't you protected by men and women on around the White or the House?" He said, "Now this is his own quote." Law-abiding citizens just shouldn't need a gun, but we deserve gun protection. That's Charlie Rangel, Democratic congressman. So in other words, you don't deserve to be protected. You don't need it, but I need it. So all my bill would do is say, if it's a gun-free zone, which Washington, D.C. is, then we don't have to worry about anybody shooting a congressman because it's a gun-free zone. So shouldn't they be just as unprotected as the common citizen is?
Well, let me ask, why is Washington a gun-free zone?
Because the D.C. government, which is a Democrat-controlled city, has been for decades, has almost a complete ban on the private ownership of guns.
So D.C.'s the next target.
And even after the Heller decision, which struck down their ban, they turned right back around and basically, through what is the definition of type city ordinances, continued with the gun ban. So, Franklin, it's a gun-free zone. Why do they need to be protected with guns?
Mm-hmm.
Is Charlie Rangel right? I don't deserve it, but he does.
Do you have is there a question there?
That's a law.
Okay.
You know, if
No, I wouldn't support that.
why not?
Sorry. Because the Congress of the United States, the president and so forth, those are big targets for
Okay.
terrorists.
For terrorists.
Yeah.
So the woman, the single mother living in D.C. whose abusive boyfriend has beat the hell out of her 4 times in a row and threatened to kill her, she doesn't have a real reason to need to be protected, right? According to you. Not as much as Charlie Rangel, wealthy congressman,
As you
Democrat
pointed
liberal
out, we
congressman from
need
New
to
York City.
enforce the laws against that sort of conduct.
In other words, file an order of protection.
Right. So when he comes beating on her door, she'll call and say, I need an order of protection because he's kicking my door in.
Right.
I think the police should come and intervene, yes.
And they always get there in time, right? Now they get there
Okay.
in time for Charlie
Wait a minute.
Rangel
Wait a
because
minute. I was trying to get somewhere this morning.
the guy walked around
I'm
the
trying to-
Capitol and
I'm trying
counted
to get y'all-
34 armed guards around Charlie Rangel.
I'm trying to find out what we could change about a gun bill between a Republican and a Democrat that you would both agree to.
I would agree to the terrorist watch list if we had proper due process. And I will tell you, if
All right,
I were
72
John
hours.
Lewis,
72 hours is not enough time.
I think it is.
Okay. Why do you think 72 hours is? Because basically it's just a matter of
Because when
looking it
I
up
go
on
in
a
to buy a
computer.
gun, the FBI's background check takes about 10 to 30 minutes depending on the
All right.
volume.
Would you give?
You're not on the
Would,
watch list.
would you give? Would you give a week just to get a bill passed?
Well, I don't know. How is a week?
That's the question. How intrusive is that? They have to wait a week.
But here's the problem. Is a week enough time for an abusive boyfriend to kill someone before they're able to buy a gun?
Yes.
Well,
5 minutes is too long if they happen to be following you to the gun shop, John.
Well, not,
but we
no,
can't.
actually,
but we,
if you pass
but we
a background
can't.
check,
But we
you'll
have.
walk
But we
out
have.
with a gun.
We have big issues here, and then we have. You'll always be able to find an exception somewhere where it didn't work perfectly. You always will be.
What's the strictest gun control state in the country?
I don't know the answer.
California is one of the strictest. Where was the mass shooting right before Florida? California. By the way, it was illegal for someone to buy a gun legally and transfer it to them, but he did it.
Where did
That's
he get,
our
yeah,
point.
That's right. Where did he get the gun?
He got it illegal in the
He
black
got it from
market.
another state.
Right, which is illegal. No. The guy that bought the gun was legal. He passed all the background checks. He was legal. But it was illegal for him to then sell the gun, which, by the way, you had one of your news people this week went and to show how easy it was to buy an AR-15, bought the AR-15 with an agreement in place to transfer that AR-15 to a gun dealer that she knew. That's actually a federal crime that journalist committed because it's illegal to do that. But she did it on national TV. You had David Gregory on one of the Sunday news program brought a gun in, an AR-15 with the clip, 30-round banana clip, which was illegal under D.C. law, held it up on camera. No prosecution of him. No example set.
Was this in Washington?
Yes, in Washington, D.C. on Meet the Press. Held it up. It was an illegal gun. It was illegal for him to have that gun in the studio at the time.
Do you think he had an escort to bring it in?
No, you can't have an escort. It's illegal, no matter what. But my point is, the Justice Department didn't call him and say, we're going to press charges. They didn't even do an investigation. That's our problem. And by the way, it doesn't matter whether the Cornyn bill's 72 hours or a week, as Franklin suggested. For example, the shooter in Orlando, 3 FBI investigations, and they never placed him on the list. The problem is the ineptitude of our federal bureaucracy. So you can have whatever system you want, but if they're incompetent in executing it, it won't matter.
All right. Enough on that. I want you to think about it for next week, and let's try to come up with one thing that we can agree to on the gun bill.
Well, let me leave you with one thing. No. While the Democrats,
I'm not going to answer you.
While I'm answering, no, this is an answer as well.
All right.
While the Democrats were sitting in the House floor, ISIS issued a propaganda guide on how to kill the infidels with knives, cars, bats, poison, and explosives.
Good. Because they won't kill as many people that way.
Actually, the leading mass murder choice of weapons is explosives, Franklin.
Well, that's true, John.
The worst
How many
mass
of those
murder
we had?
why?
Because that's a lot harder to pull
off. The worst
off.
mass murder in America was actually in a school in 1929 using explosives. And it was a Democrat former school board member that did it.
What's the worst mass murder in America in the last 25 years?
It was the last.
Who was that?
No, it was box cutters and airplanes.
We're almost out of time.
It was 9/11 with a box cutter.
I want to talk about something else. We're almost out of time. The Hillary says it's time for the Benghazi situation to end, and let's move on. What's your opinions?
Well, I think the report that was issued yesterday, even by the Republican report, said what I've been saying for 2 years. There is a security lapse there. It's okay to hold her accountable because she's the head of the department. But there was no evidence whatsoever of any direct involvement by her in it. And all these goofy theories about she's watching it in real time or she went to bed in the middle of it all proved to be false.
Actually, that's not true.
It is true.
She actually testified that she had no knowledge of any guns being smuggled and run through Syria.
That was the next issue.
Well,
different issue entirely.
No, she lied to a congressional committee. She said she had no direct knowledge. There are 3 different memos sent to her that indicate we were not only running guns, but we knew the guns were being stolen and being funneled into the...
Just move on to a new topic and say it's the same one as before, and it's not.
It's all Benghazi.
No, it's not.
All right. Did she have a meeting with the president at 7:30 p.m. that night about Benghazi? That was never been told. They never met about it.
Well, frankly, let me ask.
And he wasn't watching it in real time.
They had real-time feed, but you're right, they weren't watching it.
Right.
They had a 3-hour meeting.
And they also found that the Department of Defense could not have done anything further to save those people.
Why did they change clothes 4 times?
On the runway, while they sat on the runway.
The uniforms. They had them change the uniforms 4
The
different
Fleet
times.
Anti-Terrorism Security Team.
The Republican lawyer, retired from the military, who was working with the committee, concluded there was nothing the Department of Defense could have done. That was his conclusion.
Now I'm
Why
going to defend.
can't y'all accept
Well, listen, I'm going to say something defensive of President Obama. President Obama and Defense Secretary Leon Panetta both gave clear orders to deploy military assets. They know that those orders were given. And yet they sat on the tarmac for 4 hours in Rota, Spain, or 3 hours, and changed in and out of their uniforms 4 times while people in the White House, including the campaign managers of the Obama campaign, discussed what uniform they should wear so they didn't offend the Libyans. Now, Franklin, nobody has answered.
John,
look, Panetta testified that the White House, that the president and he gave an order to deploy. Why was there no deployment?
These Republican committees released their reports, and then y'all sit about ignoring what's in them.
Well, let's discuss.
You want to know why people are so cynical about it? That's why we're cynical about it.
Let's discuss the
Because
video.
it's nothing but the Get Hillary campaign.
Well, why did
That's
Hillary?
all you're doing.
Why would they have them put their uniforms on and take their uniforms off
Just
4
get the
times?
report and read it.
That's what I plan on doing.
I'd like that.
Will you read it?
I sure will.
Will you give
all
us a fair
700
opinion?
pages of it.
Will you give us a fair opinion of what you find?
Absolutely.
Well, Franklin, let me ask you a question.
There's nothing in that report about Donald Trump.
This gets to
Probably not.
Franklin. This gets to Hillary.
He was busy, flipping steaks at the Trump Steakhouse or
Franklin,
something.
this gets to Hillary and the State Department. When they decided to extend the presence in Benghazi, the State Department had a meeting in December of 2012. Senior officials from the Bureau of Diplomatic Security were excluded from the discussion. Now, that's under Hillary's control.
John,
why would they have excluded the security
for
people?
For 2 years, I have been telling you the same thing. Actually, for 4 years, I've been telling you the same thing. There was a security lapse there, and people died because of it. Hold on, let me finish.
Who was in charge?
Let me finish.
Uh-huh.
And because she was the head of the department, I'm okay with you holding her accountable for that.
Okay.
That doesn't bother me at all.
All right.
It's these goofy conspiracy theories that are just nutty.
Well,
and you need to just focus on the real issue instead of this crap.
We have focused.
No,
we've,
you haven't.
We've said that she
John,
lied
you're the
point
one
blank
John,
to
you have come
the
in
American people,
You
and
have
she
come
lied
in here,
to the victims'
You
families.
have come in here a
and
dozen
you defended
times,
her.
John. You're the one that come in here with this
Lying
story.
Hillary.
Oh,
Do
she
you
was
agree-
watching it in real time.
Do you agree that she
you
lied
came in
about
here-
the video?
You came in here and said,
Franklin?
"Oh, she went to bed in the middle of
Do
it and got a
you
good night's
agree that
sleep."
she lied
None
about
of
the
that's
video?
true.
Do you
Just say 90% of this stuff you've come in here and said has proven to be false.
That's not true.
It is true.
Hold on. We've got to calm down because we've ran out of time. I'm sorry I didn't bring this up earlier, but let me say one last thing in closing. There's a new book that just came out. It's a CIA agent that used to work for Bill Clinton.
No,
Okay,
it's a Secret Service
agent. I'm sorry. Used to work for Bill Clinton.
That's right.
Anyway, he was talking about Hillary, what a violent person she is.
That's what he said.
And how she took something and hit Bill over the head with it and blacked his eye. And they had to have a special meeting just to talk about how they were going to protect the president from his wife.
That's what he said.
All right. That's all I
Oh,
want.
well, be sure to bring that back up next week because there's a lot more we could say about that.
Well, look, I will say this about him. He is lucky that he wasn't one of the state troopers that protected Bill, because 9 out of the 11 of them have died.
Well, what you should bring up is that the Retired Secret Service Agents Association said it was a bunch of crap, that he was the lowest level on the chain and would have never gotten anywhere close to the president. That's what they said.
Well, evidently he knows something.
Yeah, he knows how to make a buck.
All right. I'll see you. Bye-bye now.
You've been listening to